My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm 29 years old, and on the day I was supposed to become a wife, I found my father standing alone in a hallway with nowhere to sit, while 9 people from my future husband's family were seated at the table that had been reserved for him. Table 1, right at the front, right in the center of the room. That was where my parents were supposed to be. Instead, someone had moved them to table 14, the very last table in the reception hall, squeezed between the kitchen entrance and a service bin. When I asked the man I was about to marry why it happened, I heard him say something about my father that made me realize I had been ignoring the truth for nearly 2 years. I stood there in my wedding dress, with 200 guests waiting just beyond the wall, and I made a choice I could never undo. And honestly, I would make that same choice again. What I did, what Garrett said, and what happened to his family afterward is the story I'm about to tell you. Before we begin, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if this story deserves it, and drop your city and local time in the comments. I always like knowing who is listening. Now let me take you back to the morning of June 14th, the last morning I ever woke up as Garrett Whitfield's fiancé, Millfield, Ohio, population 8,000. It was the kind of town where the pharmacist remembered your family history, and the mail carrier knew your dog's name without checking the address. I grew up on Birch Lane, in a 2-bedroom house my father bought the same year I was born. It took him 22 years to pay it off. On my 16th birthday, he wrote the final check, then took all of us to Dairy Queen to celebrate like we had just won the lottery. My dad, Dave Marshall, spent his life fixing pipes. 35 years in the same pair of steel-toed boots, resoled 4 different times. Around year 20, his knees started giving him trouble. Around year 30, his back began to follow. But when I was in school, I never saw that man miss a day of work. He would come home at 6, scrub the oil and grime from his hands with that orange soap that smelled like citrus and fuel, then ask me what I learned that day. My mom, Linda, worked the lunch line at Millfield Elementary. She served meals to 400 kids every day, and somehow she knew every single one of them by name. She knew who could not have milk. She knew who had food allergies. And she knew which children came to school hungry because there was not enough at home. Those kids always got extra portions. Always. We were not rich. I shared a bedroom wall with the water heater. My winter coat in 7th grade had belonged to my cousin 2 years earlier, but our door was always open. Dinner was always warm. And not once did my parents make me feel like I lacked anything important. I got through college with scholarships and student loans. I became a nurse practitioner at the community clinic on Route 9. By 28, I had paid off every dollar I owed. I built that life with my own hands, but the foundation beneath it was Dave and Linda Marshall. I believed a family like that would be enough for anyone. I was wrong. I met Garrett Whitfield on a Tuesday in October, 2 years before the wedding. His father, Richard, had come into the clinic for a routine checkup, and Garrett had driven him there. He was leaning against the reception counter when I walked through with a patient chart in my hand. Tall. Dark hair brushed back, the kind of jawline that looked like it had been designed by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He smiled at me, and I'll be honest, I smiled back. We had dinner that Friday, then again the next week, then every week after that. Garrett was charming in a way I was not used to. He opened doors, pulled out chairs, took me to a French restaurant in Columbus where the napkins felt more expensive than my winter coat. The Whitfields lived in a world I had only seen from a distance. They were real estate developers, 3 generations deep. Their name was attached to a subdivision, a commercial plaza, and a bronze plaque at the country club where they had been members for 25 years. Their house had 5 bedrooms and sat on 2 acres. Richard ran the company. Garrett handled acquisitions. His mother, Constance, chaired the Hope Foundation's annual gala and served on 2 nonprofit boards. The first time I met Constance, she wore cream silk and pearl earrings the size of dimes. She shook my hand, looked me up and down, and said, "A community clinic. How interesting." Then she added, "Garrett used to date the Harrison girl, Dr. Harrison's daughter over at St. Luke's." She smiled when she said it, but it was not the kind of smile that makes you feel welcome. I told myself that was just how people in families like theirs talked. Formal, polished, a little cold. I told myself it did not mean anything. Garrett squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She'll warm up." She never did. But by then, I was already in love, and love can make you explain away warning signs you should have never ignored. Garrett proposed 14 months later at a steakhouse his family owned, in a private room filled with candles and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Constance was sitting 3 tables away. Garrett called it a coincidence. I said yes anyway because the ring on my finger had not come from Constance. It came from the man who drove 40 minutes just to bring me soup when I was sick, the man who texted me every morning, the man who told me my parents were good people and that he could not wait to call Dave Dad. Then the wedding planning began. And slowly, the version of Garrett I thought I knew started to fade. Constance picked the venue. The Whitfield Country Club, of course, not the little church on Maple Street where my parents had gotten married. She picked the wedding planner, her friend Diane. She picked the menu. And when my mom gently suggested adding her fried chicken as one of the appetizers, Constance tilted her head and said, "That's sweet, Linda, but this is a seated dinner, not a potluck." My mother laughed it off, but I saw her hands tighten in her lap. Every time I pushed back, Garrett gave me the same answer. "Let Mom have this one, babe. After the wedding, it'll just be us, our house, our rules." I was not weak. I want to make that very clear. I made what I thought was a smart choice. Give up the little things now, protect the bigger life later. The venue did not matter. The menu did not matter. What mattered was the marriage. The 40 years that would come after the party. That was how I explained it to myself, and it sounded reasonable right up until I understood that the little things were not little at all. They were practice runs. Constance was seeing how far she could push, and every time I stepped back. I did not realize it then, but the wedding day was not the real test. It was the final practice round, June 14th, 6 in the morning. I woke up in my old bedroom at my parents' house with sunlight slipping through the curtains my mom had sewn when I was 12. My dress hung on the closet door, ivory satin, tea-length, bought with my own savings. Constance had tried to steer me toward a designer gown from a boutique in Columbus. I said no. This was the one thing I kept for myself. By 10, I was at the Whitfield Country Club. The place looked like something from a bridal magazine. White peonies in crystal vases, ivory linens, gold-rimmed chargers at every seat, 300 candles, a 12-piece string ensemble warming up in the garden, $85,000 worth of venue, decor, and catering. Most of it paid for by the Whitfields. 200 guests were expected. Half were from Garrett's side. Business partners, country club members, the mayor's wife, the Hendersons, the Porters. The other half were mine, my Aunt Grace from Akron, 3 nurses from the clinic, my college roommate, old neighbors from Birch Lane, people who drove pickup trucks, wore department store dresses, and had probably never heard the words charger plate before. I noticed the imbalance almost immediately. The Whitfield guests were placed in the front rows, at the center tables, closest to the dance floor. My people were scattered around the edges. Margot, my maid of honor, and my best friend since freshman orientation, leaned toward me during the processional rehearsal and whispered, "Why are your aunt's people all the way in the back?" I brushed it off. "Probably just the numbers. Their side has more guests." Margot lifted an eyebrow, but she let it go. The ceremony happened at noon. I walked down the aisle. Garrett was waiting for me. He looked perfect. He always looked perfect. And that was part of the problem. I had spent so much time admiring the frame that I forgot to look closely at what was inside it. After the ceremony, while everyone moved toward cocktail hour on the terrace, I slipped into the reception hall to check the final setup. Call it habit. I'm a nurse. I checked things twice. The room was beautiful, 20 round tables covered in white, gold place cards held in tiny brass stands. Table 1, the head table, sat directly in front of the dance floor and the stage. It was set for 10 people. That was where both sets of parents were supposed to sit, along with Garrett's grandmother and my Aunt Grace. I walked over to table 1 and picked up the first place card. Gerald Whitfield, Constance's brother. I picked up the next one, then the next. Lydia Whitfield, Thomas Whitfield, Mr. and Mrs. Porter, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, Patricia Whitfield Ross, Gerald Whitfield Jr., 9 Whitfields and their close circle, not one Marshall. My chest went tight. I started checking the other tables. Table 2 had Whitfield cousins. Table 3 had country club members. I kept going. Table 10, Table 12, then I found them. Table 14, the last table in the room, pushed against the far wall beside the swinging kitchen door. I could hear pots and trays clattering behind it. The chairs were not the polished mahogany ones used everywhere else. They were padded folding chairs, the backup kind. A service cart with used glasses sat 2 feet away, and the light above the table was dimmer than the others because it was not a chandelier. It was a utility fixture. Dave Marshall, Linda Marshall. I stared at those 2 place cards, gold ink on cream cardstock, placed on a table beside a foot-pedal waste bin. I found Diane, the wedding coordinator, near the bar. Who changed the seating chart? Diane did not even blink. Mrs. Whitfield adjusted it this morning. She said the bride approved it. I never approved anything. I stood there in that reception hall alone, and I did what I had trained myself to do in urgent care. I assessed the situation clearly. Table 14, swinging kitchen door, clattering plates, folding chairs, a service bin with a foot pedal sitting 2 feet from the place where my father was supposed to eat dinner at his daughter's wedding, and I knew exactly what would happen if I stayed quiet. My parents would sit there. They would not complain. My dad would straighten his tie, the one he bought back in 2009, the only nice one he owned, and he would smile at me and say, "It's fine, sweetheart." My mom would place her napkin neatly in her lap and pretend she could not hear the kitchen noise just a few feet behind her, and Constance would know. She would know she could move Dave and Linda Marshall anywhere she wanted, to the back of the room, to the edge of the picture, out of the picture completely, and no one would challenge her. Every Thanksgiving after that, every Christmas, every future birthday, my parents would always be treated like table 14, the people who did not quite belong, the ones you place near the service entrance so the important guests do not have to notice them. I thought about my father's hands, 35 years of pipes, tools, and hard work. That man could rebuild a bathroom in a single day. He had saved for 6 months to buy the suit he was wearing. Then I thought about my mother's dress. She had made it herself from an older one, adding lace to the sleeves and replacing the zipper by hand. I had watched her work on it for 3 weekends in the spare room, bent over the sewing machine, pins held carefully between her lips, squinting as she guided the fabric through. These were the people who raised me, fed me, got me to school through winter roads and long mornings, showed up for me every time it mattered. And someone had decided they belonged beside a service bin. So I went to find Garrett. I still believed he would fix it. I still believed he would be upset for me. I was wrong. Again. And I know some of you listening right now are thinking about your own parents. Maybe yours worked extra shifts so you could have braces. Maybe they drove hours to sit through every school play, every game, every little moment that mattered to you. So if you have ever had someone look at your family like they were not enough, write this in the comments. My family is enough. Because what happened next is the reason I will never let anyone place my parents at table 14 again. I found Garrett in the groom's suite. He was standing in front of a full-length mirror, adjusting his cufflinks. Silver. Monogrammed. A gift from Constance. Who moved my parents off the head table? He did not look away from the mirror. Mom rearranged a few things this morning. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? Garrett, they do not have proper seats. They have seats at table 14. Table 14 is next to the kitchen, next to the service bin. He sighed. Not a worried sigh. Not a surprised one, the kind of sigh people give when they think you are making a problem out of nothing. Fonda, we have 200 guests out there. Can we not do this right now? When exactly should we do it? After dinner? After they sit there for 3 hours pretending they are not being humiliated? He finally turned from the mirror. His face was calm. Too calm. The face of a man who had practiced sounding reasonable while saying things no reasonable person should say. Mom has her reasons. The Hendersons and the Porters are at table 1. They're important. More important than my parents? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He stepped closer and placed his hand on my arm. Soft, careful, rehearsed. Baby, you're stressed. It's our wedding day. Let's just get through dinner and I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. Tomorrow. That was always the answer. Tomorrow after the engagement party. Tomorrow after the shower. Tomorrow after the wedding. But tomorrow never actually came. I searched his face for something. Surprise, guilt, concern. Anything that would tell me he had only just found out. But there was nothing. No shock, no anger on my behalf, no rush to fix it. He had known. Maybe since that morning. Maybe longer. He knew Constance had moved my parents to the back of the room, and he had still gotten dressed, fixed his cufflinks, and checked his reflection like nothing had happened. I walked out without saying another word, but there was still one more thing I needed to see. On my way back through the corridor, I stopped at the welcome table near the entrance. A neat stack of printed programs sat beside the guest book. Ivory cardstock, gold lettering, perfectly arranged. I picked one up and opened it. Page 2 read, "With love and gratitude to our families." Underneath were the names, Richard and Constance Whitfield, Gerald and Lydia Whitfield, Thomas Whitfield. The Whitfield Family Foundation, 4 lines, all Whitfield. I turned the program over, checked the back, checked inside the fold again. Dave and Linda Marshall were nowhere. In the original version, the one I had approved 3 weeks earlier, my parents' names had been first. With deepest love to Dave and Linda Marshall, whose sacrifices made all of this possible. I had written those words myself. Constance had seen the final proof. She had not objected. She did not need to. She simply waited until the morning of the wedding and had Diane print a different version. My parents' names were removed, not only from the seating plan, from the official story of the day. I found Margot near the bridesmaid's room, fixing her lipstick in a small mirror. The second she saw my face, she lowered it. "What happened?" I told her everything, the table, the program, Garrett's reaction, all of it. 30 seconds, no pauses. Margot did not overreact. She did not tell me to calm down. She did not ask if I was sure. She just closed the lipstick, slipped it into her clutch, and looked straight at me. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet." "Okay, then what do you need from me?" "Stay close." "I'm here, Fonda. I'm right here." She did not say, "I warned you," even though she had. 6 months earlier, Margot had gently told me there was something about the Whitfields that made her uneasy. She said it once, then she let me make my own choice. That was why I trusted her more than anyone else in that building. I still did not know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew the next thing I heard would decide everything. So I walked back toward the groom's suite. I was not trying to listen in. I was going there to give Garrett one last chance. I was going to stand in front of him and say, "Fix this, or I do not walk into that reception." But the door was slightly open. 3 inches, maybe 4, just enough for every word to reach me. Constance spoke first. Her voice was low and controlled, the way it always was when she wanted to sound polite while doing something cruel. "Garrett, look at her father. That suit looks 20 years old. And her mother? Did she make that dress herself? They look out of place. You cannot have them sitting at the front table." Garrett's voice followed. "I know, Mom. The Hendersons are sitting right there. Jim Porter and his wife will be watching. These are the people who matter, Garrett. Not—" She paused, then said it anyway. "Not a plumber and a cafeteria worker." "You're right," Garrett said. "The Marshalls are fine in the back. It's more appropriate." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Constance said, even quieter, "You should have listened to me from the beginning. She does not belong here. She does not belong here." I pressed one hand against the wall. For a second, the hallway seemed to shift beneath me. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Slow, heavy, final. My father had spent 35 years working with his hands, kneeling under sinks, repairing pipes, coming home tired and still asking me about my day. He had 2 bad knees, 1 good suit, and a heart bigger than that entire country club. He used to drive 4 hours round trip on weekends when I was in college, just to bring me groceries because he worried the dining hall food was not enough. And my mother, she had spent her life feeding children, remembering their names, and making sure no kid walked away hungry if she could help it. A plumber and a cafeteria worker. That was how they said it. Like those were things to hide. And the man I was supposed to marry said, "You're right." Some words can never be unheard. Those were some of them. I stepped back from the door. My hands were no longer shaking. Something inside me had become strangely calm, the way everything gets quiet in a crisis when your mind finally knows what to do. I pushed the door open. Constance turned first. For half a second, her face froze. Then she arranged it back into that practiced smile, the one that looked welcoming from a distance but felt like a locked gate up close. "Fonda, sweetheart, you look stunning." I heard everything. Garrett's jaw tightened. "Heard what?" We were just... My father looks out of place. My mother made her dress. They do not belong at the front table. I looked directly at him. What part did I misunderstand? Constance stepped forward with her hands clasped, like she was chairing a charity luncheon instead of standing in the middle of a disaster she created. Fonda, this is only a seating arrangement. We were simply trying to make sure... You said my father's job like it was something shameful. Her mouth opened, but I kept going. And you talked about my mother's work like she should be embarrassed by it. I didn't mean... Then I turned to Garrett. And you said they were fine in the back, that it was more appropriate. Garrett lowered his voice, smooth, careful, the same voice he used when business conversations got uncomfortable. You're overwhelmed right now, Fonda. It's our wedding day. Let's just take a breath. I am breathing, Garrett. My voice was steady. I have never been more clear. Constance gave him a quick, sharp look, the kind of look that said, handle her. Garrett tried again. Baby, come on. Let's not ruin... I am not ruining anything. I looked at him one last time. You already did. Then I turned and walked out. The hallway was quiet. 60 feet of polished hardwood stretched between me and the reception hall. Behind me, I heard Constance say something to Garrett under her breath. I could not make out the words. But it did not matter. Garrett's footsteps did not follow. He did not come after me, and that gave me the final answer I needed. I walked toward the reception hall, but I did not go inside. Not yet. First, I went to find the only two people in that building who had never once made me feel like I was anything less than enough. Margot was waiting exactly where I had left her, leaning against the wall outside the bridesmaid's room with her arms crossed, watching the hallway like she was guarding a courtroom door. Tell me, she said. So I did, word for word, Constance's voice, Garrett agreeing with her. The way they said plumber and cafeteria worker, like those words made my parents smaller. Margot stayed silent for 5 seconds. Then she asked, What are you thinking? I'm thinking I cannot put my name on this. She nodded once. No dramatic reaction, no shocked gasp, just that sharp, focused look she wore when she was working a case. Okay, she said. Then here's what you need to know. She lowered her voice. The ceremony is over, but the marriage license has not been signed yet. Diane has it. The plan was to sign it after dinner, remember? At the sweetheart table during dessert. I remembered. Constance had insisted on turning it into a little show, the bride and groom signing in front of everyone like one more polished moment for the guests to admire. So legally, Margot said, you are not married yet. The ceremony was only symbolic until that paper is signed, witnessed, and filed with the county. No signature, no legal marriage, no need to undo anything later. I let that settle in. The vows, the rings, the words from the officiant, none of it had sealed my life to his yet. The only thing that mattered was a signature on a piece of paper inside Diane's leather folder. How long do I have? As long as you do not sign it. But Fawn, once you walk into that room, once the speeches start, once Diane brings that license over, the pressure to sign in front of 200 people will be enormous. I know. So whatever you are going to do, you need to decide before you sit down. She placed her hand on my arm, firm, steady. I'm your lawyer and your best friend, in that order tonight. Whatever you choose, I'm standing next to you. I found my parents at table 14. Dad was sitting straight, hands flat on his knees, the way he always sat when he felt uncomfortable but refused to let anyone see it. His suit jacket was buttoned, his tie was perfectly straight. He had polished his shoes that morning. I could tell by the soft shine, the kind that comes from drugstore polish and a kitchen cloth. Mom sat beside him, smoothing a crease from her dress. She had altered it herself, taken in the waist, added lace to the sleeves, replaced the zipper. 3 weekends of work. I had watched her bent over the sewing machine in the spare room, pins held between her lips, eyes narrowed as she guided the fabric under the needle. A server pushed through the kitchen door behind them. It swung open hard, sending out a burst of heat and the sound of stacked plates. Mom flinched. Dad did not move. Hey, sweetheart, Dad said when he saw me. Then he smiled. You look beautiful. Dad, I am so sorry about... Don't. He lifted one hand gently. I can sit anywhere, baby girl. This is your day. It's our family's day. He looked at me for a long moment. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not anger, not hurt exactly. Something quieter than that. Understanding, maybe. Like he already knew the thing I had not said out loud yet. I thought about the $12,000 sitting in the catering company's account. My parents had saved it over 15 years. A little each month from a plumber's pension and a cafeteria worker's paycheck. That money covered the catering deposit. Every plate, every glass of wine, every dessert that 200 guests were about to enjoy. Without that $12,000, there would be no dinner. And Constance had placed the people who helped pay for that dinner beside the service entrance. "Stay here," I said. "Both of you. I'll be right back." Mom reached for my hand. "Fonda, don't make trouble because of us." "I'm not making trouble, Mom." I squeezed her fingers. "I'm ending it." The reception doors opened. 200 guests began filing in, while the string ensemble played Pachelbel's canon like a lullaby for people who had never wondered whether they belonged in the room. I watched from the edge as everyone found their seats. The Whitfield side settled into the front tables, with the comfort of people who had spent their whole lives being placed in front. The Millfield side moved toward the edges, checking place cards, pulling out chairs that did not quite match the rest. Derek, the MC and Garrett's old fraternity friend, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the families of our beautiful couple." He gestured toward table 1. "The Whitfield family." 9 people stood. Constance smiled like she had personally arranged the sunrise. Richard gave a modest little wave. Gerald and Lydia lifted their glasses. The room applauded. Derek paused, glanced down at his card, and moved on. "And now, let's raise a glass to love." That was it. No mention of the Marshalls. Not one word. From across the room I saw Patricia, my charge nurse, the woman who had trained me when I first started in emergency care, walking toward table 14 with a small plate of appetizers. She stopped, looked at the folding chairs, looked at the swinging kitchen door, then looked at my father. Her expression changed. She set the plate down and came straight to me. "Fonda." Her voice was low and steady, the same voice she used when everything around her needed calm. "Why are your parents sitting next to the service entrance?" "I'm handling it, Pat. That man rebuilt the plumbing in my house for half the usual price when my pipes burst in January. He would not even accept extra money." "I know." "Then why is he sitting beside a service bin at his daughter's wedding?" At table 1, Mr. Henderson, Richard's biggest development partner, leaned toward his wife and said something quietly. She turned, looked toward the back of the room, then looked at him again with a frown. People were beginning to notice. The polished version of the evening was starting to crack. The first course was served, butternut squash bisque in white porcelain bowls. My parents' $12,000 poured into bowls and finished with tiny greens like none of it had cost them years of saving. Then Constance left table 1 and walked toward the bar with her friend Vivian beside her. Their path took them right past table 14. I was standing near the dessert station, about 20 feet away, close enough to see, close enough to hear. My mother was adjusting the lace on her left sleeve. A small section of stitching had come loose, leaving a few inches of thread hanging from the cuff. She was trying to tuck it away quietly, with the careful focus of someone who did not want anyone to notice. Constance stopped. She looked at my mother's sleeve. Then she turned to Vivian and said, "Bless her heart, someone should have bought her a proper dress." She took a sip of champagne. "But I suppose everyone has to know their place." She said it the way she said everything, with a smile, soft enough to pretend it was private, loud enough for the right people to hear. My mother's hands went still. She stopped touching the sleeve. Her eyes dropped to the table. Dad reached under the tablecloth and took her hand. He did not say anything. He just held it. I had seen difficult things at work. I had stood in rooms where families received news that changed their lives forever. I had learned how to stay calm in moments when other people could barely breathe. But watching my father, Dave Marshall, the strongest man I have ever known, sit there and absorb that woman's cruelty while holding my mother's hand under a folding table near the service entrance, that hurt more than anything I had ever seen. Because for the first time in my life I saw him look ashamed. Not ashamed of who he was, ashamed of the situation, ashamed of being placed somewhere he did not deserve to be, and not knowing how to make it right without hurting me. That was it. I was done. Completely. Permanently. I crossed the room, grabbed Garrett's arm near the edge of the dance floor, and pulled him behind a column where the closest tables could not hear us. Your mother just embarrassed mine in front of guests. What did she say? She said someone should have bought her a proper dress. Then she said everyone has to know their place. Garrett ran a hand through his hair. Fonda. No, do not do that. Mom says things she does not mean. She means every word, and you know it. Can we please just get through dinner? Go over there and tell your mother to apologize, right now. He looked at me. Then he looked across the room at Constance, laughing with Vivian near the bar. He looked at table 1, where the Hendersons sat. He looked at the string ensemble, the flowers, the candles, the perfect room full of people he wanted to impress. Then he looked back at me. I'm not making a scene, Fonda. 200 people are watching. Then whisper it. I do not care how you do it. Just do it. He straightened his jacket, took a breath, and said the sentence that ended us. Your parents will be fine. They're tough. Let's just get through tonight. Then he turned and walked back to table 1. He sat down in his gold-trimmed chair. Constance leaned over and patted his arm. He picked up his wineglass, and I stood behind the column alone. The string quartet moved into something soft and expensive. Servers passed by with trays of seared salmon, my $12,000 salmon. 200 people laughed, talked, and lifted glasses in a room where my parents had been given seats that told them exactly how little the Whitfields thought they mattered. Garrett had made his choice. He chose the table. He chose the room. He chose his mother. Now it was my turn. I walked straight to table 14 and sat down, not at the sweetheart table, not beside the groom, between my parents. Mom looked at me, confused. Honey, you should be up front. My family is here, I said, so I'm here. Dad studied my face. He had known me for 29 years. He could always tell when I was about to do something. Fonda, he said quietly, carefully. Don't do anything because of us. I'm not doing this for you, Dad. I looked at him. I'm doing this for me. Across the room, I looked toward the bridesmaids' table. Margot was already watching me. I met her eyes and gave one small nod. She nodded back, reached under the table, picked up her clutch, and stood. I took one breath, then another. Then I pushed my chair back and stood up. The walk from table 14 to the stage was only about 60 feet, but it felt longer than any aisle I had walked that day. My heels clicked against the polished hardwood, sharp and steady, like a countdown. A few people turned first, then a few more. The conversations did not stop all at once. They faded table by table, like a wave moving through the room. By the time I reached the stage, almost everyone was silent. Derek, the MC, was in the middle of some story about Garrett's college days when he saw me step up beside him. He stumbled over his words. The bride. Everyone. A few people clapped, uncertainly. I took the microphone from his hand. He let it go without a fight, his face stuck somewhere between confusion and a polite smile. I looked out at the room. 200 faces, crystal glasses, white linens, gold place cards. Constance sat at table 1 with champagne in her hand. Garrett was beside her. Richard stared down at his plate, and behind me, at the far end of the room, were my parents. Table 14, the last table. From across the room, Constance leaned toward Garrett. I could not hear her, but I could read her lips. What is she doing? I adjusted the microphone. Thank you all for being here today. My voice came through the speakers clear and steady. No shaking, no tears. I had spent years working in emergency rooms. I knew how to stay calm when everything around me was breaking. I know you came here to celebrate a wedding, and because of that, I believe you deserve to know the truth about what is happening in this room. The last whisper disappeared. 200 people went still. I could hear ice shift in someone's glass at table 6. Most of you know me as Garrett's fiancée, but before I was that, and after tonight, I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I turned and pointed toward the back of the room. My parents are sitting at table 14. I would like everyone to look at table 14 for a moment. Every head turned. All of them. 200 pairs of eyes moved past the front tables, past the bar, past the dessert station, past the kitchen door, until they found Dave and Linda Marshall sitting at a folding table between a service cart and a waste bin. I watched the realization move through the room. First confusion, then recognition, then the slow tightening of faces as people understood exactly what they were seeing. Jim Henderson set down his fork. His wife, Carol, lifted a hand to her mouth. Patricia, standing near the wall, closed her eyes and shook her head once. At table 1, Constance's smile hardened into something cold and polished. Her hand tightened around the stem of her champagne flute. Garrett sat beside her, jaw locked, eyes fixed on me. 12 hours ago, I continued, my parents were seated at this table. Table 1, right here in front, where the families of the bride and groom were supposed to sit. That was the seating chart I approved. I let the words settle. This morning, that changed. This morning, someone came into this room and replaced the place cards at the head table. My parents were removed and reassigned to the last table in the room, beside the kitchen, beside the service entrance, beside the waste bin. I paused again. That person was Constance Whitfield. Every head at table 1 turned toward her. Constance sat perfectly still, chin raised, but the color had drained from her face. Her fingers around the glass turned pale. Richard looked down at the tablecloth. He did not move. When I confronted my fiancé, when I told him what his mother had done, he told me not to make a scene. I kept my voice even, factual, like I was reading a chart out loud. And when I later heard him speaking privately to his mother, he said, and these are his exact words, the Marshalls are fine in the back. The Hendersons and Porters are more important. Jim Henderson pushed his chair back slightly, not dramatically, just enough to put space between himself and the Whitfields. His wife stared at Garrett with a look I knew well, the look people get when they suddenly understand they have misjudged someone. Garrett stood. Fonda, that's not... You're twisting... Sit down, Garrett. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. You had your chance to stand up for my family. You chose not to. He stayed standing for 3 more seconds. Then Constance tugged lightly at his sleeve, and he lowered himself back into his chair. The room was so quiet I could hear the kitchen door creak on its hinge. My Aunt Grace, sitting at table 11, placed both hands flat on the table and whispered, "Tell them, baby." I looked back at the guests. Let me tell you about the people who were moved to table 14. I turned slightly, just enough to see my father from the corner of my eye. He was sitting upright, hands on the table, looking straight at me. My father, Dave Marshall, fixed pipes for 35 years. He has 2 bad knees and 1 good suit, the one he is wearing right now. He saved for 6 months to buy it. A woman at table 9 pressed a napkin under her eyes. My mother, Linda Marshall, serves lunch to 400 children every school day at Millfield Elementary. She knows every child by name. She knows who cannot have peanuts, who cannot have dairy, and who comes to school hungry. Those children always get extra. Then I turned back toward the front tables. My parents contributed $12,000 to this wedding. They saved that money over 15 years. That money covered the catering deposit. The room absorbed the number. People looked down at their plates, at their wine glasses, at the carefully served food in front of them. Every plate being served tonight exists because my parents helped pay for it. Then I looked directly at Constance. And you placed them beside a service bin. The room broke open. Gasps. A sharp inhale from table 3. Vivian, Constance's friend, quietly set her glass down and shifted away from the woman she had been laughing with only minutes earlier. From the back, a man I did not recognize, someone from the Millfield side, stood up. Then Patricia stood. Then my Aunt Grace. They did not say a word. They simply stood there like witnesses. Constance opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Garrett stared down at his plate. Richard Whitfield still had not moved. I came here today to begin a marriage, I said. A partnership, a life built on mutual respect. My voice stayed steady. I would not let it break. Not there. Not in front of her. But I cannot sign my name to a marriage where my family is treated like something to hide. I will not build a home where love means being ashamed of where you came from. I reached up and unpinned my veil. Then I folded it once, twice, 3 times. I placed it carefully on the edge of the stage, folded neatly the way my mother had taught me to fold things with care, even when you were letting them go. To the guests from Millfield, thank you for driving here. Thank you for showing up for my family. We're going home. Then I looked at Constance one last time. To the Whitfields, I truly wish you well, but I deserve better than a man who stays silent while his mother looks down on my father, and my parents deserve better than table 14. I set the microphone back on the stand. No slam, no dramatic drop. Just placed it down gently, the way you put away a tool when the job is finished. Then I stepped off the stage and walked toward the back of the room. My heels met the hardwood again, that same steady rhythm, 60 feet. Only this time no one spoke over it. Dad stood when I reached him. Mom was crying. Quiet tears, the kind she always tried to hide. I wrapped my arms around both of them right there, between the folding chairs and the kitchen door. Margot appeared beside us with my coat and bag. She had already called a car. The 4 of us walked out together, past the dessert station, past the string quartet which had stopped playing, past 200 silent faces. Behind me, I heard Constance's voice, sharp and brittle. She's lost her mind. Then Garrett's voice. Fonda, wait. I did not wait. The door closed behind us, and the last thing I heard was my own breathing. If you are still here, then you already understand why I did it, but I want to hear from you. Has anyone ever made you feel like your family was not good enough, like your parents did not fit in? Write, not table 14 in the comments if you know that feeling. And if this story hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Now, what happened after I walked out? That is where the real story begins. That night, I sat at the kitchen table in my parents' house, the same table where I had done homework since 3rd grade. Formica top, chrome legs, a chip in the corner from the time I dropped a cast iron skillet in high school. Mom made coffee. Dad sat across from me without saying anything, which was his way of saying everything. At 9:15, Margot called. The marriage license is still unsigned. I confirmed it with Diane. She has the original document. It was never signed, never witnessed, and never filed. So legally? Legally, you were never married, not for 1 second. No annulment, no divorce, nothing to undo. You walked away clean. I exhaled, and one of the knots in my chest loosened. There's more, Margot said. Since you live together, he may try to make claims about shared property, but your lease is in your name, and your bank accounts are separate. You're in a strong position. Okay. One more thing, he's been calling. 17 missed calls from Garrett, 3 from Constance, 1 from Richard. Block all 3. Already done. After Margot hung up, I stayed at the kitchen table for a long time. Dad had gone to bed. Mom was washing the coffee mugs, even though the dishwasher was empty. She always washed things by hand when she was worried. My phone was silent now. No more calls, no more messages switching back and forth between, baby, I'm sorry, and you embarrassed my family, and you're going to regret this. I did not need Garrett's apology. I needed him to stand up 6 hours earlier and say, that is my wife's family. Put them back where they belong. He did not. And I could not forget what I had heard. Mom dried the last mug, set it in the cabinet, then kissed the top of my head on her way to bed. I'm proud of you, she said. Your father is too. He just isn't good at saying it. 2 weeks later, I got sick in the bathroom at 7 in the morning. Then again at noon. And again at 4. I bought a test at the CVS on Route 9, the one where Gail, the pharmacist, had known me since I was 6 years old. She looked at the box, then looked at me. She did not ask a single question. She just rang it up and handed me the bag. Positive. 2 pink lines. Clear. Unmistakable. On the bathroom floor of my parents' house, I sat on the tile and cried, not the way I once imagined I might cry in that moment, not with pure joy or stunned happiness or the soft glow people talk about in announcement videos. I cried because my life had just become 10 times more complicated, and I was sitting on a bathroom floor with the same grout my father had installed in 1998. I was going to be a mother, and the father was the man I had walked away from in front of 200 people. The question came quickly. Should I tell Garrett? The answer came even faster. Yes. This child had the right to know both parents, but telling him did not mean going back. It did not mean doubting my choice, and it definitely did not mean trading my dignity for a co-parenting arrangement wrapped in Whitfield money. Mom found me an hour later. She had come in for towels, saw the test on the counter, and went completely still. Then she sat down on the floor beside me. Cold tile, bad knees. She did not ask anything. She just put her arm around me and held on. "You're not alone," she said. "You've never been alone." "I know, Mom." "Your dad is going to lose his mind." She paused. "In the good way." I almost laughed. Everything was harder now, but harder did not mean wrong, and being alone did not mean being defeated. Not when I had a mother who would sit on a bathroom floor beside me without needing to be asked. I told Garrett by email. Margot reviewed every word before I sent it. 3 sentences. Professional. Final. "I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. If you want to discuss parental rights, all communication will go through legal counsel." His response came in waves. The first email said, "Come home, Fonda. We'll raise this baby together. We can fix this." The second came 4 hours later. "My family will pursue parental rights. You have no idea what you're up against." The third arrived at midnight. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." 3 emails, 3 different versions of the same man, pleading, warning, predicting disaster, all from the same person who could not stand up to his mother over a seating chart. Then Constance called. She used a new number. Mine had blocked her, so she tried the house line. Dad answered. I was standing in the kitchen doorway. "Mr. Marshall," Constance said, her voice perfectly controlled. "I trust you understand that this child is a Whitfield. We have the best attorneys in the county." Dad looked at me. I nodded. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, "my daughter has a lawyer. Talk to her." Then he hung up, set the phone down gently, and went back to his coffee. That week, Margot connected me with her colleague, Hannah Wells, a family law attorney in Columbus. Hannah was direct. "Ohio courts usually look closely at who the primary caregiver is," Hannah said. "You have steady work, strong family support, and no pattern of instability. His family's money does not automatically give them power." So I did everything properly. Paperwork, deadlines, legal channels, no phone calls, no arguments in driveways, no emotional back and forth, just boundaries, documents, and a lawyer between me and the Whitfields. Constance had said they had the best attorneys in the county. Maybe they did. But I had something she had not expected. I had stopped being afraid of her on a Saturday in June. The fallout did not arrive all at once. There were no headlines, no dramatic public collapse, just a quiet, steady unraveling of the reputation the Whitfields had spent years polishing. The following Monday, Jim Henderson called Richard. I did not hear the conversation myself. I heard it later through Margot, who heard it through Hannah, who heard it from someone connected to Henderson's circle. "Richard, I've been thinking about the Oak Ridge development. I'm not comfortable moving forward." "Jim, what does a wedding have to do with a business deal?" "If that is how your family treats the people closest to you, I need to think carefully about how you would treat a partner when things become difficult." Henderson stepped away from the Oak Ridge project, a mixed-use development worth by local estimates more than $300,000 from his side alone. Richard had to find a new investor. The project stalled for 8 months. 3 weeks after the wedding, the Hope Foundation board held a private meeting. Constance had chaired their annual gala for 6 years. She had raised more money than any chair before her. But donors had started calling. Members were asking questions. People were suddenly uncomfortable with the image attached to her name. Constance was not removed publicly. That is not how small-town society handles these things. She was simply invited to step back and focus on family. The gala happened in September without her name on the program. I did not make any of that happen. I want that understood. I never called Henderson. I never contacted the foundation. I never posted the story online. I never explained what happened in that hallway to anyone except Margot and my parents. I did not have to. 200 people watched Constance Whitfield place a plumber and a cafeteria worker beside the service bin. Then those 200 people went home and talked. Consequences do not always arrive with a spotlight. Sometimes they arrive as a phone call on Monday morning. A month after the wedding, Garrett came to my parents' house. I was upstairs when I heard the knock. Then the screen door creaked. Then my father's voice. "Garrett." "Mr. Marshall, I came to apologize. I was hoping to talk to Fonda." "She told you to go through the lawyers." "I know what she said, but I wanted to say this in person. I should have handled things differently. I should have stood up for your family." Through the upstairs window, I could see them. Dad stood on the porch, arms at his sides. Garrett stood one step below him on the front walk, looking up. "You should have," Dad said. "Can I see her?" "5 minutes." Dad did not move. He did not cross his arms. He did not shift his weight. He simply stood in the doorway the way he had stood in every important doorway of my life. Solid, present, impossible to move. My daughter made herself clear. If you want to be part of this child's life, Hannah Wells has the paperwork. That is the path. Garrett's face tightened. For 1 second, that polished patience cracked, and what showed underneath was not regret. It was frustration. The frustration of a man who was used to the world bending for him and could not understand why it no longer was. "You're going to regret this," he said. "My family won't let this go." Dad looked at him for a long moment. Then he said something I will never forget. "I'm not keeping anyone out, son. I'm guarding the door." Then he stepped back inside and closed it. Not with a slam, just a click. Quiet. Final. The sound of a latch sliding into place. I watched from the upstairs window as Garrett stood on the walkway, staring at the closed door. Then he got into his car and drove away. Dad never brought up the visit. That night at dinner, he passed the potatoes and asked how things were going at the clinic. 5 months. That is how long it took me to build a new life from the pieces of the old one. I found an apartment 3 blocks from my parents. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, $850 a month. The carpet was beige. The kitchen had 1 counter. The bathroom fan sounded like it was about to lift off the ceiling, but it was mine. Mom came over with a measuring tape on the first day. By the end of the week, she had sewn curtains for every window, blue gingham for the kitchen, white cotton for the bedroom, yellow flannel for the room that would become the nursery. Dad arrived on Saturday morning with his toolbox. He fixed the dripping kitchen faucet, changed the shower head, reinforced the closet rod. Then he spent 3 hours in the nursery building a shelf from reclaimed wood he had saved from a barn demolition in Fairfield County. He carved a small groove along the top edge. No name yet. Just a place where one would go. During my last trimester, I reduced my hours at the clinic. Patricia, my charge nurse, rearranged the schedule before I even asked. "You covered for me when I had hip surgery," she said. "This is nothing. I will not pretend it was easy." There were nights I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Not because I regretted leaving Garrett. I never regretted that. I cried because carrying a child without a partner is hard in ways no one fully prepares you for. The cramps at 2 a.m, with no one there to bring you water. The ultrasound appointments where the technician asks, "Will the father be joining us?" The baby shower my mother hosted in her living room, where the only empty chair was the one that would have been his. I chose this. I would choose it again. But choosing the right thing does not magically make it simple. Single motherhood is not a punishment. It is not a fairy tale either. It is life. And I was living it. Elise Marie Marshall came into the world on a Tuesday at 6:14 in the morning. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, 10 fingers, brown eyes, a cry strong enough to fill the whole delivery room. Marshall. I gave her my name, my parents' name, the name of a plumber and a cafeteria worker who never once made their daughter feel like she was not enough. Dad held her first after me and the nurses. His rough hands held her as carefully as if she were made of glass. For a full minute he said nothing. He just stood by the window with morning light on his face, holding that tiny baby in his arms, and breathing like the whole world had finally gone quiet. Mom took pictures. 47 of them. I counted later. 2 weeks after Elise was born, a letter arrived at my apartment. There was no return address, but the stationery was thick and expensive. The kind people buy from specialty shops, not from the drugstore. I recognized the handwriting from the Whitfield holiday cards Garrett used to show me. Richard Whitfield. I opened it at the kitchen counter while Elise slept in the bassinet 3 feet away. "Fonda, I owe you an apology. Not only for what my wife and son did, but for what I failed to do. I was there. I saw the seating chart change. I heard the conversation. And I said nothing. That silence belongs to me, and I will carry it. I do not expect forgiveness, and I am not asking for access to my granddaughter, But if a day ever comes when you would allow it, I would be grateful. I read the letter twice, then I folded it and placed it in the nightstand drawer beside Elise's hospital bracelet. I did not answer. Not that day. Not that month. Maybe Richard meant every word. Maybe it was another careful move from the Whitfield playbook. I did not know, and I was finished making choices based only on hope. This time, I would let time give me the answer. Not wishful thinking. 1 year later, Elise is 13 months old. She has my eyes, her father's jaw, and a laugh that sounds like a tiny hiccup coming through a speaker. I am back full-time at the clinic. Last month, they promoted me to shift lead. It came with a $2 raise and a set of keys to the supply closet. And I have never been prouder of a set of keys in my life. My apartment still has beige carpet and 1 kitchen counter, but the walls are full now. Pictures of Elise at the pumpkin patch, Elise wearing Dad's reading glasses on top of her head, Elise smearing sweet potato all over Mom's apron. The bookshelf Dad built now holds 32 children's books and 1 framed photo of my parents on their wedding day in 1991, standing outside the little church on Maple Street. The parenting arrangement was finalized in October. Garrett has 2 weekends a month. He picks Elise up at 9 and brings her back by 5. Always on time. I will give him that. Constance is not part of the arrangement, not because I closed the door completely, but because I set one condition. Any visit with extended family must happen with me present or with my parents supervising. Constance called it disrespectful. I called it a boundary. She has not met Elise, not because the door is locked, because she refuses to walk through it unless she gets to choose the terms. Garrett and I communicate through a co-parenting app, short messages, pickup times. Doctor's appointments, no small talk, no emotional arguments, just logistics. He is different on handoff days. Quieter. Sometimes he holds Elise a little longer before giving her back. Once I saw him lean down, smell the top of her head, and close his eyes, and something in my chest ached. Not for him exactly, for the version of him that might have existed if he had been brave enough to choose differently on that Saturday in June. Sunday dinner at the Marshall house starts at 6, same as it has every week since I came home. The table is the same one I grew up with. Formica top, chrome legs, a chip in the corner, 6 chairs, and not one of them matches. Dad's chair is a wooden rocker he refinished from a yard sale. Mom's has a cushion she crocheted back in 2004. Mine is a folding chair from the garage, but the good kind with a padded seat. There are no place cards, no gold chargers, no string quartet. Mom made her fried chicken, the same recipe Constance removed from the wedding menu, mashed potatoes from scratch, corn on the cob because Elise likes holding it, even though she does not have enough teeth to really eat it yet. Margot is here too, along with her boyfriend Tomas, the one she met at the courthouse last spring. Patricia comes every Sunday now. She always brings pie and claims it is because she accidentally baked too much. Nobody believes her. Nobody minds. Elise sits in Dad's lap, grabbing at his glasses. He lets her. He always lets her. You know, he whispers to her, like he is telling her a secret. Your grandpa used to fix pipes for this whole town. Now I just fix things for you. She throws a spoon onto the floor. Everyone laughs. I look around the table. The overhead light buzzes a little. Dad says he will fix it next week. The wallpaper in the hall is peeling near the seam. There is a draft by the back door that Mom blocks with a rolled towel from November through March. There is no champagne here, no crystal glasses, no $85,000 venue, but every person at this table chose to be here. Every person belongs, and nobody is sitting beside a service bin. This is my table 1. I am not telling you this story because I think every life has the same answer. Every situation is different. Every breaking point is different. And I do not know what your table 14 looks like, but if there is a room in your life where you are always pushed to the back, always near the door, always made to feel like you should be thankful for any seat at all instead of asking why that seat was placed beside the service entrance, I want you to know something. You can stand up. You do not need a microphone. You do not need 200 witnesses. You do not need a lawyer waiting in the hallway or a father standing guard at the door. You only need to know it deep inside you. Past the doubt, past the guilt, past that quiet voice telling you not to make trouble. The people you love deserve respect, And if the person you chose stays silent while someone looks down on your family, then they did not truly choose you. They chose comfort. They chose convenience. They chose the easier version of love, the kind that never asks for courage. But that is not love. That is just a seating chart. My name is Fonda Marshall. I am 30 years old now. I am a nurse, a mother, a shift lead, and Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I live in a one-bedroom apartment with beige carpet and a bookshelf my dad built from old barnwood. My daughter laughs like a hiccup, throws spoons on the floor, and has never once sat at a table where she did not belong. And I have never been prouder of where I come from. That was my story. Now I want to hear yours. If you have ever had to stand up for your family, type Table 1 in the comments. And tell me honestly, do you think I made the right choice? Would you have answered Richard's letter? That is the part I am still figuring out. If you are new here and this story stayed with you, subscribe. I share stories like this every week. There is another one linked in the description that I think you will connect with. Thank you for staying until the end.